Good evening. Thanks for tuning in.
Hello, Mr. Jeff Donley, who is running for the Sheriff of Cherokee County. I'm Trenton Adams, and welcome to the Cherokee County Republican Party candidate interviews. Thank you very much for taking the time out of your campaign to participate in this interview process. We've extended this invitation to all candidates in the race and have sourced questions from the CCRP membership. We have found that it has been an asset for voters in making their decision. The video will appear on the Cherokee County GOP website and will be shared on social media. The interview will be shown unedited in its entirety. For the interview, we will ask you a number of questions but can offer no prompting. There are no right or wrong answers, only your answers. We ask each candidate the same questions. If this is all right with you, I'll have everyone introduce themselves and then I'll ask John to begin asking the questions.
Very good.
I'm John Longshore.
Harry Abrams.
Under which branch of government is the sheriff, and what do you believe the sheriff's role and relationship is with the other two branches of government?
It's state, local government. And would you repeat the rest of what you said?
Yeah. Under which branch of government is the sheriff, and what do you believe the sheriff's role and relationship is with the other two branches of government?
Interesting. The sheriff is a constitutional officer. He's also a county officer. He is attached to, I believe, the local authority of government. I know he doesn't fall under the judicial or executive. And his role is just, he's a constitutional officer and he abides by the Constitution and the state laws of Georgia and the ordinances of Cherokee County.
What types of gun control laws and legislation do you support?
I support the Second Amendment wholly. I'm very, very passionate about the Second Amendment. The legislation I support is the background checks. I also support that if somebody shows some type of mental illness and they need evaluations, I support that. Also, legislation involving family violence. If somebody's convicted of an act of family violence, they don't need to possess a firearm because they may have that propensity to commit another act of violence, and that firearm can come into play.
Please explain your position on the issue of citizens filming police officers in public.
I've learned years ago that cameras are everywhere. We have one right here. Cameras, everybody has one now, especially those who have iPhones, those who have stores. Working years of criminal investigations, you can find a camera on somebody just about anywhere. I have no problem with someone filming an officer's conduct. If the officer is forthright in doing his job and he does his job properly, he should not have anything to worry about anybody recording. Now, if it gets in the way of his, performing his duties, then you have to take a stance, because not only is he jeopardizing your well-being, but theirs as well, or even a third party. But to answer your question, I don't have a problem with citizens recording police conduct.
Why is the marshal's office a distinct entity from the sheriff's department?
The marshal's office, they have several functions. The marshal's office, they are not only what some people call dog catchers, they have animal control officers, and they also have code enforcement. Those code enforcement officers are state certified peace officers. As it stands now, they have arrest powers. They act as a peace officer would in any capacity, whether they were inside the city limits. They could act as a city officer. They have power throughout the county, and they have arrest powers, and they're certified, and these folks are trained. They've got great leadership, and I would have them as backup any day of the week. Now, the animal control officers, those are non-certified personnel. They handle strictly investigations that involve animals. Code enforcement, whether it's a stray or picking up an animal, or maybe the abuse and lack of care for an animal. Those are the type of things that they look into. But the marshal's office himself is an important resource for not just Cherokee County, but for the cities within Cherokee County and the sheriff's office.
The marshal's office is tasked with enforcing noise ordinance violations, which typically occur during those hours the marshal's office is closed. Would you push to have this incorporated as a mutually applicable law rather than a separate jurisdiction issue?
Well, during the hours, daytime hours, evening hours, up until 11 o'clock at night, the marshal's office will respond to noise ordinance-related calls. After those hours, a 911 call that comes in and it's of a noise ordinance violation, then the sheriff's office will respond to those calls. And we handle them appropriately, whether they're a loud party, barking dog, and a copy of the report that is filed by the officer will be forwarded to the marshal's office within the next few days for follow-up.
Paragraph 8 of the Georgia Constitution states that searches, seizures, and warrants, the right of the people to be secure in their persons, houses, papers, and effects against unreasonable searches and seizures shall not be violated, and no warrant shall issue except upon probable cause supported by oath or affirmation, particularly describing the place or places to be searched and the persons or things to be seized. Please describe the difference between a reasonable search and an unreasonable search.
Unreasonable search, you've got probable cause and you've also got articulable suspicion. Articulable suspicion is giving the same set of circumstances, would a person with the same information act in the same manner. When probable cause, it's one step further than that suspicion rule, and I have probable cause to believe that either a crime has been committed or will be committed, and I can act upon that.
Are you currently up to date with all post certifications, and what are they?
Yes, I'm currently up to date. I've got 4 hours of the mandatory 20 for 2016, and I plan on over the next 7 months gaining the additional hours to stay in compliance and keep my status as active and in good standing with post.
Are you currently employed by a law enforcement agency?
No, I'm not.
Have you attended and been certified by the FBI Academy?
No, I have not.
When was the last training event that you attended, and please describe it?
The last training event that I attended involved human trafficking, and it was January of this year. Human trafficking ties into criminal money laundering and other serious crimes of prostitution, all types of levels of criminal conduct that are above the threshold of what goes on locally. It all ties back into dope. It ties into criminal enterprise on a federal level that feeds down to the local level. And the training that I attended was in Atlanta, and it involved human trafficking.
As Cherokee County residents, if we ask your current or last supervisor, which area of your work ethic needed the most improvement, what will we learn?
Last supervisor, I would say trying not to do too much. I try to fill my day and take care of what is needed, but sometimes I let time get away and my management in that time element. If I need to do something, need to be somewhere at a certain time, I find myself pushing to make that appointment time because I've taken too much time to that one event. So I would say time management.
If you could start your career over again, what would you do differently?
Knowing what I know now, if I would to do my career over again, there are life's lessons that we learn when we are young that I would probably take my time and think through just a little bit more instead of making a rash decision. But those decisions that are made when you're 21, 22 years old, they are life lessons to learn, but by no means should it define somebody's character, especially after 25, 30 years of law enforcement.
Would you support releasing inmates who are awaiting trial based on their risk to the community instead of whether or not they can post bail?
Yes, I would.
What are your thoughts on the federal government passing laws providing for the control of privately owned firearms?
Could you repeat that again here?
Sure. What are your thoughts on the federal government passing laws providing for the control of privately owned firearms?
I don't support the federal government taking control of anybody's firearms. I oppose that.
What is your plan to rid our county of illicit drug makers and traffickers?
You have to approach it on a couple levels. One, you have to, it's my plan, you have to meet with the judges, the prosecutors, get everybody on board on the same page and toughen up on crime. We have to get everybody on board that Cherokee County is no place to bring criminal activity. What we have to do is get the word out to the community, and the only way to do that is through tough sentences. You know, don't cut somebody loose on probation, on a felony drug charge of either of its trafficking. You have to show that Cherokee County is not worth the time, literally, to come here and commit, drug trafficking, possession on a felony level where they're manufacturing, distribution violations. Cherokee County is not the place for that. And the only way you're going to be able to rid it is if they take a tough stance on it.
What is your plan to address and prevent human trafficking within Cherokee County?
Interesting. You have to look at multiple levels. You have to look at your runaways. A lot of runaways don't intend to become victims of human trafficking, but what they do is they find themselves on the street, they find somebody who takes them in, and once they take them in, they find themselves now bound by their will, whether it be debt, they have housing, they have nowhere else to go, they feel trapped, and they have no other recourse. So what you have to do is you got to look at the runaways. You have to look at the offenders who are committing drugs. You work hand in hand with your school, and you look at your at-risk kids, who is on that prone level of becoming a runaway or is having trouble at home. You work with DFACs. You work with all the criminal investigations divisions of the city agencies, and you kind of pinpoint, where the money is funneling, your dope trafficking, all that ties back into human trafficking because it's a generating wealth for those who are involved in that type of activity.
Do you consider it unethical to promise anyone a position in the Cherokee County Sheriff's Department to garner support for your election?
Absolutely.
Would holding annual or biannual public sheriff town hall meetings be rewarding for the county?
I think they should hold it more than just biannually. I think we've got 7 offices in Cherokee County, and there's no reason why we can't hold town hall meetings at one of these precincts at least every couple months. The problems that are taking place in Waleska are going to be different than the problems taking place in Hickory Flat or Ball Ground. Those problems need to be addressed on an individual basis and dealt with more than just twice a year. Problems happen more than twice a year. So every other month, you need to have town hall meetings at one of those precincts at least.
What actions would you take if any federal agency did not notify the county sheriff's department of a forced property seizure or conducted operations in the county without prior notification? Does the sheriff have a role in defending individuals in the county from improper federal overreach?
Yes. The sheriff being the constitutional officer as well as the county officer, the public holds a great deal of trust in him, and he trusts his people. If the federal government comes in for some reason or another and tries to seize somebody's property and they don't notify that county chief law enforcement officer, excuse me, then there's got to be a problem as to why they didn't. I would address that problem with whoever is in charge of that seizure, who's ever in charge of that scene, and I would pinpoint a couple folks that I would have a lot of faith in, and I would have them team up and work hand in hand, and not just try and me take it on personally. I've got competent people who can do the job, and they're the ones that need to figure out why this happened, why we weren't notified, and try to mitigate it to a level that it didn't get to this point that we weren't notified. Maybe hopefully next time cooperation will be a little bit better and we'll be notified.
Differing from a law enforcement response to an immediate danger to life or property, no-knock search warrants allows for immediate breach of entry into a home. Even though not specifically authorized by OCGA 17-5-27, do you support the use of no-knock search warrants in Cherokee County? If so, under what circumstances would you use a no-knock warrant?
No-knock warrants have a purpose in law enforcement. Depending on the offense and the probable causes established, there's a criteria that has to be met. When you do a no-knock warrant, you have to provide probable cause as to why the no-knock needs to be done. Why you're announcing yourself must be avoided. There's got to be a reason for it. The magistrate should ask these questions, but then again, the officer should provide detailed information as to what the purpose is of the no-knock warrant. There should also be, your due diligence has to be done. You establish who lives there, how many people live there, how long they've lived there, who may visit at what time of day. You do your due diligence to find out who the occupants are. That way you determine if there's anybody who's there who's elderly. Somebody that you may not know who lives there that may visit, stay a week or two, and they become part of that investigation, or they could be part of that actual offender in that investigation. There's a lot of work that needs to be done. You need to do your due diligence. And on no-knock search warrants, I think it's an officer safety issue, and I support it.
Civil forfeiture involves the government taking property that belongs to a citizen upon reasonable suspicion. To regain property from the government, a citizen must prove the innocence of both themselves and of the property being seized in opposition to the presumption of innocence. And the seizing party is allowed to directly profit from items seized by civil forfeiture. The states of Minnesota and New Mexico have passed laws that permit asset forfeiture only in cases of a conviction. Do you agree with this? Why or why not?
I agree with the seizure of the property if you can tie it to a criminal act. I was with a federal task force not too long ago. In that task force, we had to look through certain bank secrecy documents, and we had to find a criminal act that we could tie to that seizure. Prior to 2013, civil seizure was pretty common. Structuring of deposits into a bank account that was legal source deposits that had no criminal activity tied to them was creating a burden on citizens. So what they had to do is they had to go to court and they had to fight and spend money to get their money back. And what they were doing is it was killing their business and it was killing their livelihood. So the government decided that this needs to change. And when I became part of the task force, we were the first task force in the Southeast region who focused on tying a criminal act to those seizure funds. But to answer your question on the property, could we seize it? Should we seize it if we can tie it to a criminal act? Yes. Upon conviction, hold it? Yes. And then once convicted, complete the seizure? I support that.
A member of Cherokee County's legislative delegation has submitted legislation HB 832, which states the court shall stay civil forfeiture proceedings during the pendency of criminal proceedings resulting from a related indictment or accusation until such time as the criminal proceedings result in a plea of guilty, a conviction after trial, or an acquittal after trial, or otherwise concluded before the trial court. As sheriff, would you support civil asset forfeiture before or after due process and a criminal conviction?
After due process.
Bills have been introduced to allow Leo to ask for carry permits of anyone carrying a sidearm. While currently not passed in Georgia, if such a law were to pass, would you, as a policy, prohibit your deputies from asking for permits solely on the basis of carrying?
If the law says that we are not to ask based solely upon our curiosity, then I would support that law, and I wouldn't circumvent that law unless, of course, the officers had probable cause to believe some suspicious activity or something that would warrant either reasonable suspicion or probable cause.
All right. Do you believe that body cameras would effectively solve the problem they're proposed to solve?
I think body cameras solve some of the problems. It's very difficult to pick up on a camera beyond what you would see from here out. Peripheral vision sometimes gets hampered, whether it be with an object or the officer's lack of experience. But just having just a frontal view, it's hard to see what's coming from either the left or from the right. But the body cameras, they're better than what officers have now. Officers now who don't have body cameras, it's about their credibility. It's about their word. And the body camera only backs it up. But the body camera will show what the true events were that happened within that camera's view. Anything else is just speculation.
Are you currently a member of the Cherokee County Republican Party?
Yes, I am.
We would like our elected Republican leaders to help us grow the party. Please briefly describe any significant efforts you have made in the past to support the Republican Party and/or Republican candidates locally, statewide, or nationally.
I support our local candidates, and I also encourage my family members to attend things like Tea Party meetings, Republican Party meetings that they have once a month, whether it be here or the breakfasts that we used to have. I think they're informative. It's a great networking opportunity, and you gain friendships.
Last two tough questions. Have you ever been arrested or convicted of a crime excluding traffic offenses?
No, I have not.
And have you ever been the subject of professional discipline or cited for breach of ethics or unprofessional conduct by any disciplinary committee, court, administrative agency, or other professional group?
No.
Well, thank you very much. Is there anything else you'd like to say to the people watching the interview?
Sure would. Thank you. I appreciate your time. Ladies and gentlemen, in the next upcoming months, you and the other citizens of Cherokee County are going to have to elect another sheriff. That sheriff, in my opinion, needs to be someone who is humble but forthright, somebody who is fair and not judgmental. It needs to be somebody who is not beyond sitting on the front porch or leaning against a car and talking to somebody who just needs to talk. That's really important to me. I bring a unique experience to Cherokee County. I've served this county for 30 years. Over that time, I've patrolled these streets, both as a deputy and as a supervisor. I've worked at jail. I've worked at detention center, both as a deputy and as a supervisor. And I've also worked hundreds and hundreds of criminal cases. And I've convicted criminals and took them off the street, put them in jail where they belong. And I've done that for many, many years. And during my last 7 years, I was assigned to a task force that was going after those who are committing identity fraud, the fastest growing crime in the nation. Ladies and gentlemen, I know Cherokee County, and I know where you can go during the daytime and have an enjoyable afternoon, and I know where you don't need your kids to be at night when the sun goes down. I know the people, I know the criminals, I know the element. I bring Cherokee County experience to the table. I appreciate your vote, May 24th. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So, to repeat the question, something that came to mind, this is an addendum to the interview. Have you ever been the subject of professional discipline or cited for breach of ethics or unprofessional conduct by any disciplinary committee, court, administrative agency, or other professional group?
Yes. It was a long time ago, 1987. I was terminated from the City of Woodstock Police Department. Following that, I went to work within a couple weeks with the Cherokee County Sheriff's Office. In 1989, during the early days of the John Say administration, all certifications were checked and mine was found to be suspended. Apparently Post had sent a notification to the City of Woodstock. Since I was no longer employed with the City of Woodstock, they discarded it. Since Post didn't know where I was working, they just decided to suspend my certification pending contact. Once I discovered this, I got an attorney, contacted Post, and we worked through it. Post agreed to put me on 2 years probation and said that my certification was suspended for a period, I want to say, is either 4 to 6 months, and my status was active. No further action was taken after that.